Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Benaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Helen,
hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to finally find a moment to speak with you.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine.
Helen, you've done some amazing things. You've written an absolutely incredible book. You are an executive coach. You're the chair of the board of governors at Concordia University, and you also lecture at some prestigious institutions like the MIT. I was wondering if we can dive into your personal story and how your love for the Molson family began.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you met Andrew Molson?
I met Andrew, who's now, as you know, my husband. I met him at work. It was actually in these offices because National Public Relations, which is the firm where we met, was based elsewhere, but we met at the office. We were colleagues at the office. It was in the early 2000s. I had just moved back from France and I was working in public relations, and he was a few offices down from me, and we became friends. That was it. And we were friends for many years. I left National pretty soon after I started there, but we stayed friends for years.
How beautiful. And now you have 3 kids.
Now we have 3 kids, and we're still friends. So yeah.
And Andrew, actually, as you've specified, was very instrumental in encouraging you to write this book, because as you have shared, there was some hesitation, some fears about talking about the Molson family and doing Eric Molson's biography. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Well, he was instrumental in multiple levels. He was instrumental, first of all, because he's the one that suggested it. So his father had Eric had just had an operation, and he had retired from all his engagements in different in his business and community, and so Andrew thought, and he had just had a back operation, and we felt we needed to re-engage him in something, in terms of being engaged in something is fundamental in terms of feeling, a purpose, a drive, a going forward. So we said, well, Eric, why don't we work on a book project? And we didn't know how it was going to turn out. And so that was his idea. He's the one that sold it to his father as well. So he was instrumental in that way. And then Andrew was also instrumental personally because, he said, you can do it. And it's funny, when you don't think of yourself as, I've never thought of myself as an author. I've thought of myself as, different, I'm competent in different areas, but, writing a book was never part of my lifelong ambitions. But he said, I'm sure you can do it. And I had some self-doubt, I had some fear, and so he helped me get over that and helped me with my confidence to actually do the work. So he helped in many, many different respects. And he was my Eric never read the book before it was published. Andrew read it. So that was mine. He said it was, it's okay, we can go with it. So.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
And tell us about the journey you were on while writing the book. I know you shared in the past that you were getting up super early in the morning to really optimize the time and have these regular meetings with Eric Molson.
Yes.
How was the actual process? Was it daunting and heavy, or was it a process that was filled with joy for you?
I think that it was, initially, I was so curious about the actual story that it wasn't daunting. I was driven more by curiosity, and I was, and so we talk about the 5 o'clock in the morning was more, I needed to find time where I was not interrupted by anything. And we tend to be so interrupted in our lives by all sorts of different things that 5 o'clock in the morning was a time when, my kids were still asleep. I could turn off all email pings and whatever and just be in my bubble. Was it daunting? It wasn't at first, because at first I was just curious about the man, and I wanted to understand what drives someone like him, what allows him to realize whatever he's had to realize in his life. And so I was very, very curious about it. I loved the interviews. I loved listening to people's story. I loved to speaking with him. It became more daunting when it was time to actually write, because then I was faced once again with the, oh my God, am I a writer? But as soon as I forgot that fear, I was back into, yes, you can call it flow, you can call it, but I was just writing, so it was easier, and it was just, I knew that I could always revise it, so I just let it go. So that's how it was.
Beautiful. And what have been some of the key life and leadership lessons that have most inspired you from writing the book?
The celebrated business people that we see are often people who have a certain kind of a profile. And although that profile is very useful to get ahead, more the type A, the driven, the visionary, you don't necessarily need to be that way in order to succeed in what you want to do. So one of the lessons is that your style, your personal style, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, or whether you're leading from the front, or whether you're someone who's more withdrawn, it shouldn't impede you in terms of what you want to achieve. The second thing is the importance of fundamental values and being very aware and clear about what they are. So this is knowing yourself and knowing what's important to you and knowing your values, because there will be headwinds that will come inevitably. I mean, that's inevitably, you're going to have something either because of a bad decision you've made or because life throws it at you. And if you're not sort of clear on the principles in which you want to make your decisions on, you can be led astray. And so as long as you're clear, you're making principled decisions in when you are. And Eric was good at that. Eric knew what was important to him. So sometimes he had to make compromises. And some of them would be compromises that others might not make, which is, letting go of significant sums of money but he was clear on his principles. And so he was faithful to them. And that is knowing yourself and knowing your principles, I think is like something that is really important, especially in times like what we're living today, when there's so much noise and there's so much polarization, that I think that being in touch with yourself is hugely important.
What were some of the most intriguing stories, or if there's one story that you could share with us that really shows his character and the values that he was really paying a lot of attention to, as you said? Is there one specific story that you can share with our audience?
Yes, I'll try to make it brief. There's one of the second part of the book deals with a challenge that he was faced as chairman of the board of Molson companies. One challenge that he was faced was his relative. He had brought in someone who was another Molson, Ian Molson, who's a very talented and very savvy investment banker and banker. He really knew the world of business. He knew the world of beer as well, the business world of beer. So Eric brought him in because he thought that on the board, they needed to have someone who actually knows how to do a lot of like mergers and acquisitions and doing those kinds of transactions. Whereas Eric is more someone, as a chemist, who is much more familiar about the content of beer, like the actual product itself. He brought Ian in, and things worked really well between the two of them for the beginning. But eventually, there was a bit of a split that happened at the board. And the split was, what to do for the long-term future of the company. So whereas Eric, in the long term, wanted to keep the company and make sure that it was, that it thrived for the next, hundreds of years, Ian was about realizing the most potential value that you have, which is not a bad or good. It's just they were different in terms of their perspectives and what they valued. So eventually there came to be a transaction that now it has materialized with Coors. And when they were going to do the Molson Coors transaction, in order for it to be accepted by the other shareholders, they were going to offer a special dividend. And a special dividend, which would have allowed shareholders like Eric himself, he would have, I think, it was an amount of, he would have received a dividend of $50 million. But he was worried about if he did take the dividend, that it would seem that he was doing this just for the money, that he was pushing for this deal that he wanted to do with Coors. And he didn't. He was doing it for the long-term interests and he wanted that to be known. He thought it was for the best interest of all shareholders, not just himself. Because if you are a controlling shareholder in a corporation like Molson, where it's a dual-class share structure, as the controlling shareholder, you need to make decisions that benefit not only yourself, but for the best interest of the corporation. So he decided to forego that special dividend. Although he was entitled to it, his friends took it, his family took it, everyone else, I mean, not his family, some of his siblings. So when I say not his family, his immediate family. Anyway, so he decided to let it go, and because his principle was a principle of we need to stay in this and have it survive and be for the long-term interest of not just us, but for the whole all our different stakeholders. So that just kind of shows you what the kind of man he is. I don't know if that was clear.
Yes, absolutely, and I absolutely love that. And as you were saying, particularly in the world that we live in, with so much uncertainty, so many fluctuations, when we think about leadership, and particularly as you're lecturing in some of these prestigious universities, what would you say are some key leadership traits that leaders need to embody today to navigate in this, highly uncertain world?
I think your inner compass has to be very clear, and you're again, I'm going to go back to values. I think you have to have a clear vision of where you want to go. I think you need to bring people along as to where you're going, because there's a whole bunch of quotes about going far or going alone or going with others and going. But I think that is really important, to bring people along with your vision. I think you need to be flexible in terms of, you set out a path, but things will happen, so you have to adapt. I think it's important to have we have a lot of great orators, people that speak well, but we have to listen well and listen attentively to others. I think we're losing that ability. A leader doesn't have to have all the answers. If you're well surrounded, which is key, you can draw on the team around you to do it. So all these things are, elements that will help in your leadership. But again, it starts with knowing yourself, knowing what your values are, what you stand for, what you won't compromise on. And when it's with a group, setting the vision for the group and bringing everyone to go ahead with that.
Yes. And particularly thinking about the long term, in other words, the future generations, rather than just the short term.
In Eric's case, that was super important. In Eric's case, that was, that he never felt that Molson was his to just benefit from. He felt it was something that he inherited, and his role was to make it grow, to make it prosper, to pass it on to the future generation. Any legacy works that way. So for him, that was very important.
And talking about legacy, I know that the Molson family has been extensively involved in so many philanthropic initiatives. What philanthropic causes are most important to you and Andrew in order to continue this path of the positive legacy of building communities and basically looking beyond the corporation itself and focusing on the positive impact that businesses can actually have?
Andrew and I are involved in different things. I think education is still a key component. I mean, there's healthcare and education, but education is a key component. For example, but we're both involved with Concordia University. Neither of us are alumni of Concordia University, but we're both involved in it because it's the accessible education, it is research-based, it's community-based, it's all those kind of factors that make us want to be involved with it. I'm involved with Concordia more on a governance level. He's involved with it more on the capital campaign that they're conducting. It's what it stands for that is very important to us in terms of making an education available to all. Like it's not this Ivy League tower. It's an institution that's very grounded in its community. Even in the initiatives that it offers, to have work-based integrated learning with different work experiences that they can do while you're studying. I think that's fabulous in all that they're doing. So education, it's a lever that is really key for many people, for me as well personally, and for my children, so it's important to us.
We spoke about leadership before, and I was wondering if you could share your view on what role joy plays within organizations.
I think it is joy is the lubricant, I think, that will make things happen. We talk about culture in organizations and the importance of culture. Well, joy can be a key element in culture. If people are not feeling either connected to the mission of the organization or connected to the people around it, whatever touches them, because what makes you joyful will not necessarily be what makes me joyful. But you have to find that within the place where you spend so much of your time on a daily basis. So it can either be, more, I believe in what we're doing, I believe in the mission, I get joy from that, I believe in the work, what I'm doing, whether it's writing, whether it's computing, whether it's strategy, or I actually believe in the people that I'm with. There's different levels of joy, but I think it is a lubricant in all ways to push forward what you want to achieve together.
And given that it's so important, and all the research, at least as we're seeing on a global scale, is indicating that there's a lot of disengagement in organizations, sadly. There's also actually research that has been done that actually shows a joy gap within companies. Wow. What do you believe leaders need to do to shift the current state where only 2 out of 10 employees are actually engaged to actually bring a more joy-centric culture?
So I'm going to spontaneously respond. I haven't thought about this extensively, so I'll just give you what my thoughts are. My reaction is to that question. I think that it is a decentralized approach that has to work. So it's not the leader on top, but it's more like the manager. A person's manager has to be interested in their people. To bring joy is to try to understand and help and coach the other person to understand what is joy for them and help them make those connections for themselves. I mean, ultimately, we're all responsible for ourselves, but I do think the manager can play a huge role in terms of assessing, here's the group of people that I'm managing. Well, what's important to them? Is there a way that we can just tap into that? Because if we tap into that, well, then that could be, they'll go above and beyond what their simple to-do list will be. They'll contribute a lot more. So, benefiting, win-win for everyone.
Is there a specific life philosophy that has helped you make some key decisions, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life?
I think it goes back to curiosity. I think it's allow yourself to be guided by your curiosity and see where it takes you. I don't have a linear career path. For a long time, I thought that was a weakness, because I was like, well, you can go up the echelons much faster if you have a very linear approach. Mine was more, that looks cool. Oh, wait, I like that. Wait, I like, and frankly, it's been very fulfilling. So I do think that listening to your curiosity and following it and actively pursuing it is something that has served me well, at least. So could serve others.
Talking about curiosity, are there specific ideas or key projects that you're looking to pursue in the future that you can maybe share with us?
I would love to have an answer to that. But you are right. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about what next. I mean, people have asked me, are you going to write another book? Or, I had a great occasion with this book. I mean, it was just the research that was available to me, the people was great. I don't think I'll write another book. I love pursuing this, what inspires people to change is something that's a question that really intrigues me, and that I study closely. How I'm going to manifest that in my work, we'll see. I don't know yet.
Tell us about your Greek heritage.
Yes.
How has that influenced how you show up in the world as a parent, as a friend, and you choose to have a positive impact on the community? It
has influenced me. I'm very proud of my Greek heritage. I try to transmit it to my children. I think it is it's a source of pride, just as my Canadian side is a source of pride. What I find interesting about my Greek heritage is the combination of it. It's not, I'm so happy to be actually Canadian because I've been able to embrace my Greek heritage. I'm Canadian, I'm Quebecois, and I'm Greek. And this is something that I think is very uniquely Canadian and Quebecois, that you don't have to push something aside. You can fully embrace the different aspects of who you are and be an and as opposed to excluding one side or the other. So as I embrace my Greek heritage, the uniqueness of the Orthodox religion, some of we of course, all the history that comes with, all the ancient writers of Plato and Aristotle, all the roots of democracy, all that kind of stuff. I'm very proud of it. I'm very curious about it, and it feels that it's part of me. Here in Montreal, we have a Greek community that's quite strong, and it's great to be part of that community, as it is to be part of the Montreal community, and as it is to be part of the broader Quebec community. So it's the multiplicity of the angles that it brings you, and I think that is one of our huge advantages that we have here. We could fully live all the different parts of ourselves in our world. We're very privileged. We're very, very privileged.
And we were talking earlier, and you were mentioning that your kids are actually able to even understand Greek, which I think is absolutely awesome. So that's also part of the continued heritage that you're passing on to them, which is beautiful.
It is. There's language, there's cooking, there's Greek food, there's the religion, there's so many different aspects, there's and parts of it. But yeah, I want to transmit that to them, just as I want them to learn about their Molson heritage. Their Antoniou heritage is equally important for me.
If there would be a recipe for joy, what would be the top 3 ingredients that you think are absolutely necessary?
So I'm going to start with what I mentioned earlier. The first ingredient is knowing yourself. So that takes work, it takes years. It's a big word, but it is becoming aware of who you are and your darker side, because we all have both sides. There's what we show to the world and what we sometimes show, we think we don't show as much, but it's still present. So it's to know yourself. That's the first ingredient. The second ingredient is to be comfortable in yourself. Is that once you are comfortable in yourself, it's accepting who you are and trying to make abstraction of the shoulds. So the shoulds, as women, as men, or whatever, we get a lot of shoulds. What you should look like, what you should wear, what you should be aspiring to, what you should, if you could simply, follow more what resonates with you as opposed to the shoulds that are blasted at you, that would be good. And the third ingredient is to finally forget yourself. After, you know yourself, you get rid of the shoulds, and you express yourself, really who you are, and then you forget yourself to focus on something outside of you, bigger than you. Those, to me, is sort of the 3 elements of joy that can give you joy. Because if you forget yourself and you're doing it for something that is more of an ideal or a purpose or a calling, that can be really powerful.
I fully agree, and that's what came to mind as you were talking about this third component, purpose. Would you say you have found your purpose? Are you able to articulate it and share it with our audience?
So we have different I think we do have multiple purposes, and I think purposes change over time. If I think of myself as an executive coach, my purpose, I do get a lot of joy out of accompanying someone to be I don't like this word because it's too used, but the best version of themselves, like to help them emerge. I do love accompanying someone in that journey. I do love bringing them up and making them shine in that regard. Not making them, or just at least, prompting them in that journey. I do get a lot of fulfillment out of that. So that's one purpose. And my family purpose, it's the same thing for my children, like sort of to bring them up. So this notion of contributing is something that I find very, very fulfilling.
Has your view on purpose and joy evolved over the years, particularly if you're looking at your younger days?
It's funny, it has, and there's research on this. I don't think I'm very unique in this, but maybe on my younger days, my purpose was much more goal-oriented and achievement-oriented. And now it seems to be less that. Now it seems to be more about the actual intrinsic helping of what you can do, as opposed to the gold star or the gold medal you can get at the end. So I was someone that was very much into the, getting good marks and the gold medals and the whatever, and some part of me still is. I'm not a, but I think that I value more the underlying, what can I contribute, because, we're here for a short period of time, so make it count.
As I'm thinking about your children, and my children as well, and the children of our listeners, how do we come together to create a more joyful and harmonious world?
Well, we put down our phones.
Yes.
Put down our phones. We sit down. We look at each other. I think we've become a bit distant. We don't have as many community moments as we had in the past. Maybe it's just an impression. I have not seen anything, but coming together in community and sharing experiences together is something that, well, you mentioned was important for you. And I agree with that. I think that whether it is with your family, immediate family, or whether it's with friends, it's really just valuing the time together, exchanging, and doing what we do so well as humans, which is really speaking to each other as opposed to doing that kind of thing with each other. So that's what I think we need.
And if you could have one superpower to do good in this world, what would that be?
One superpower? Wow, that's a good one. I think it would be about, if I had a dial on the level of ego, of certain, you could just dial it down. Sometimes dial it up. Some people should be dialed up. But if I had a bit of a dial or some kind of a level of control of ego, because that can really lead us astray. I think I've seen that too often, that it leads you astray, and or I've been led astray by it. So just a bit of a more hands-on dial on ego.
And for listeners that may be questioning, well, how do they even know that they're in that ego state?
Yeah.
What advice would you give for them to actually recognize it and step away from it?
I would say notice when you're listening to someone's story, whether you're actually listening or whether you're thinking, oh, I did that. I know what that is. I did that once. If you have this habit of self-referring to yourself all the time. So notice how do you listen? How do you listen? And the habit to go forward is, once you notice how you listen to others, see how you can actually just get curious about their story and not bring yourself into it. So it's just a very simple one, but could help.
Wonderful. And if you would have a magic wand you could change anything from your past, would you change anything?
I don't know if you asked this question to all your interviewees, but I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. There's been bad things that have happened. As long as you're learning from the bad things, as long as you're using it as growing and it doesn't completely tear you down, I think that I embrace all that's happened, good and bad. Beautiful.
And to answer your question, I do ask it once in a while, and it's true. Some people have regrets from their past or their younger days, and they sometimes say, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have been more like this. While the majority, I would say, actually answer like you. They basically say no, because I am who I am today as a result of the choices, the ups and downs that I've gone through.
Yeah.
And that's what makes life rich and beautiful in many, many ways.
I tend to agree with that.
Any final thoughts on creating a more joyful world, or any specific insights that you may wish to share for our audience, just to wrap up the podcast, that you feel, some final words of wisdom?
I don't have much wisdom. I have a wish. I have a wish that we would be, that we would all recognize the humanity that is in each of us more clearly. We are approaching October 7th. And October 7th marks something for many people. And if you could just, regardless of our background, if you could just have a chance to look at and recognize and celebrate the humanity that is in each of us, that we all share. That's the one thing I wish.
Wonderful. Well, Helen, it's been an immense pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for having me.